A bad AI hiring can cost more than a salary when the person appears and start the process. But then if you realize that person is not a fit, then you already have spent a couple months paying that person.
Have you ever hired an AI engineer who looked amazing on paper but couldn't ship anything to production? That's not a people problem. That's a process problem. Here's how we fix it.
Andre, so have you ever hired an AI engineer who looked amazing on paper but could not actually ship?
Most companies they contract someone because they feel the recruiting process feels really nice. Then this person start and 3 months later, they have nothing in production. And this, in most of the cases, is not a people problem. It's more related to a process of hiring problem. So today I'm gonna walk you through about how Tesoro AI identify the right candidate for your company and where most of the hiring normal companies fails in terms of AI recruiting.
Why do resumes lie about AI capability?
Because AI is full of buzzwords. As AI is really recent, most of the things are still being on trial, most of the things are still being new. So, for example, you can find in a resume that someone says that is an expert on LLMs, but in reality, it could mean, for example, that this person has fine-tuned a model and have put it in practice a lot of learnings and produce a lot of different things related to the LLMs use it, but also could mean that someone's have been looking for different tutorials on YouTube and have put it in practice maybe inside their computer 2 or 3 times, and they put inside their resume that they are expert, but we need to learn how to identify what they're talking about and how many times had they put it in production, and in reality what being an expert means, as everything in AI is pretty new.
Now, why is AI hiring different from regular software engineering hiring?
In traditional software roles, you can test more clear skills. Like, for example, can you build an API? How do you write a clean code? So, as software engineering have more clear roles, and most of people have been working on that for a long time, there is more defined skills that people can talk about. But in terms of AI hiring, people or roles is still being not really defined, and people is also not able in most of the times to really express the uses that they have about the AI. And also we are still finding a lot of potential candidates that they have a learning about notebooks, YouTube videos, and other available tools, but they aren't applying those knowledge yet. And what that means, if they don't know how to put in production the learning that they have, that is gonna be reflected inside the abilities that they have. So technically, it's not the same someone who have defined and skills, the role that they are applying for is really clear, and the things that they are gonna put in production, they have been having a lot of resources available to do that, versus someone that is technically exploring month by month the tools and the information that is still appearing and is still available, because in this AI world everything is changing so fast. So technically that could be the difference between both.
Okay, and what does a bad AI hire actually cost?
A bad AI hiring can cost more than a salary. It can cost 3 or even 6 months of the salary that you are actually going to pay to the person that is gonna fit the role. And the reason why is like when you don't hire the right person, or when you don't define well what is the role that you are looking for, you are going to still having to pay months for the recruiting team to find the candidate. When the person appears and start the process, you are going to pay those months of salary. But then if you realize that person is not a fit, then you already have spent a couple months paying that person. And in reality, it can just stop processes. It can create delay in the products that you're gonna create for your clients. So all that time that have happening since you start the recruiting process until the moment you realize that was a bad hiring, you have lost money. And especially for startups, that means a really big loss because in most of the cases, they cannot just come back and start and test again because the resources are smaller than a big company, for example.
What do you actually test in technical depth that a standard coding challenge miss?
Standard coding challenges usually test how to code in a puzzle under pressure, and most of these tests are already designed from other previous processes. So that can tell you a little bit how the professional can design, for example, machine learning systems. Now, let's talk about what we do in terms of AI recruiting. We test on architecture question. What does mean? We want to know the way of the candidate think. How will this person answer to a real trouble, for example? How he's gonna make decisions, why he will pick an option against another one, and we want to understand how he handled these situations in real world. So we don't want to hear just normal answers that somebody can research. We want to understand the thinking of this person, and we can put, for example, hey, what would you do if we had to create or design or engine a product with 10 million users, and how you will handle those decisions and how are you going to work, for example, in that specific scenario. So we want to understand the thinking and how this person is available to take decisions.
What is the difference between a notebook engineer and a production engineer?
A notebook engineer can build models that work in a really controlled environment. They have clean data, they have no latency requirements, no users, so they can build something that works in that specific scenario. Then we have a production engineer, and this person is able to take a model and implement it into a real work. That means that they are able to control messy data, build interference, control when you have a lot of users, and monitoring how the application, the tool, or whatever they are building are available to work into a real environment, because as they already have put it in production, probably other projects, they understand better which things they have to have into account at the moment to build and create something. So this system can be scalable. So many AI candidates are really strong into notebook because they have all the tools available right now, or a lot of tools available right now, that they can use to start to implement your own projects. But when we talk about production, it doesn't mean that knowledge is gonna necessarily work in a real work environment.
And what are the red flags in technical depth?
The biggest red flag is especially the use of buzzwords. Most of the candidates already they can use a lot in big words in terms of the way that they express about the projects or the knowledge that they had, but they are not able to explain that into simple words. Other big red flag is that when you ask them about how they put that into production, like you use all these buzzwords, it sounds really nice, but when did you put this into production? What happened? How was the process? Where were the challenges? Which decisions did you take? And we, of course, understand that in most of the cases, for example, candidates are not able to present, for example, a previous code because they have a contract with the previous company that say that information is confidential, and that's okay. We understand that part, but we want to understand, for example, from their own experience, what happened and why they take the decisions that they take related to the context in the company that they used to work. So what we really want to hear is like, how did you put those knowledges into production, and how are you able to become big concepts into a small thing that you can explain to everybody inside a team, even if they are not technical?
And what are the green signals you look for?
We look for specific stories from previous role. We want to hear what did you did, how did you did, what did you take a specific decisions, and how did you put into real environment all your learnings. So are really sure that now most of people is using AI to create huge histories about what they have been doing, but with someone know how to explain the process because they were really involved is a way that we use in Tesoro AI to understand better and to identify the right candidates.
Okay, and why does communication matter so much for AI roles?
AI engineers do not work into an isolation. They work with a product manager, designers, data analysts, leadership. So they need to be able to communicate and explain also complex concepts into easy to understand for someone that is not technical. So they must be able to be all time in contact with the team and let them know, for example, when they are late into something so they don't interference in all the process inside the company. It's really important that an engineer really understand that communication is important and nobody is gonna trust or nobody is gonna work with someone that is not available to put all his knowledge into something that the rest of people inside the team can understand.
Why does cultural alignment predict retention more than compensation?
We have seen over and over that engineers who feel connected to the mission, respected by the team, who feel that they can grow in professionally inside the company, and also that the ideas that they provide are here by the team, they prefer stay inside the company over the compensation. And of course, compensation sounds really well, but in most of the cases, people prefer the stability and the possibility to keep growing inside a company over to receive a good compensation with the a sensation that they are not going to stay for a long time there. So compensation gets people in the door, but alliance keep them inside the company.
How does this framework show up in the shortlists Tesoro?
This is exactly what we build shortlists. Every candidate who reached a client has been through for all the four layers. The technical did, the production experience, communication assets, and alignment signals. So we are going to send you a shortlist with 3 to 5 candidates that can fit with the necessities of your company instead 20, 30, or 40 candidates that you have to go into review one by one. In the shortlist, you are not just going to see the candidates, you are going to see our analysis and our resume about each of the layers and how they can fit inside your company.
What should someone do if they want to see this process in action?
If you want to build an AI thing and you want to see how Tesoro AI work, visit tesoroai.com and we can start a conversation and let you know how we can build a short list based on your necessities and how you can fit the right for your company.
Technical depth, production experience, communication, alignment, 4 layers. That's how we vet AI talent.